Welcome to our journey through the historic sites of the Battle of Okinawa, one of the Pacific War's most devastating conflicts. In this video, we'll take you inside the Japanese 32nd Army headquarters, explore the solemn grounds of the Okinawa Peace Memorial Park, visit the powerful exhibits at the Peace Memorial Museum, and descend into the Abuchirogama Cave, a cave turned makeshift hospital. Join us as we remember this tragic chapter of history and its enduring lessons for peace.
All right, everybody. So today we're going to be exploring Okinawa. Okinawa has a really rich history of things that happened during World War II, which is really not that long ago if you think about it. And a lot of the most intense battles were fought around in and around this island. So we're going to take you around to the places that a lot of people don't get to see. So it should be a pretty interesting day. Before we go to any of those war memorials, I'm hungry. So we're going to go eat.
Your favorite place, which is?
Well, I don't know. There's lots of favorite places, but this place is pretty good. It is Gusto. Gusto. It's a great family restaurant with lots of great food. Now, it's very hit or miss. Sometimes it's terrible, but oftentimes it's decent enough. Yeah, breakfast is typically pretty decent. This looks like a good spot. All right, cool. Well, guys, this is the future. This is how we all lose our
Job.
This is how we all lose our jobs. The servers, they're not needed. It's just gonna be the robots now. It's gonna take all of our jobs.
No, I'm not a robot.
No, this one.
Yeah.
That's just. You got pasta?
I got the pasta.
All right, we gotta look out.
Have
The
like
snake.
a snake. And then this one is a Okinawa local tree called gajumaru.
Oh, there isn't any snakes in the tree.
Oh yeah.
So I started doing some research into the Battle of Okinawa, which was one of the final battles of World War II. So at the time, the United States, where I'm from, and Japan, where I is from, who are now incredibly good friends, were actually not very good friends at the time. So at the time, they were doing some of the most deadly, dangerous warfare throughout all of history. So one of those battles was happening right around here on the Battle of Okinawa. So the Battle of Okinawa lasted for 82 days from between the United States and Japan, and a lot of it was actually really nasty tunnel warfare. So there was probably around, I couldn't find the exact number, but it seemed like there was around 1.5 million people who were involved in the battle. And throughout those a little over shy of slightly 2 months, it was like 2 months and 3 weeks, the 82 days, there was about 250,000-ish people who had died, which was the last ditch effort to control the Okinawa Islands in Japan. So where we are right now was actually one of the most significant historical spots. And you wouldn't know it just walking by, because just around here, there isn't very many people checking out this area. So most people behind us are going to the castle, or they're just looking at the big, beautiful buildings. But what's actually far more interesting, I think, is what is just right over there. So we're gonna go over there in a minute, but like all that's there is just a door. But behind that door is something that is super special for the battle. So one of the biggest battalions or Army Corps, I don't know exactly what you call it, but one of the biggest units of the battle during World War II was the 32nd Army in Japan. So right over there is where the 32nd Army was headquartered. So the fighting didn't happen here, but a lot of the decisions for the battle of, and like literally the life and death of over 200,000 people, a lot of that decisions happen in those very tunnels right over there. So we can't go inside the tunnels, but we can check out the outside of the tunnel. So the tunnels were, and we'll take a look at the tunnels right now. But the tunnels were 1 kilometer long, and there was about 1,000 people who were living and working inside these tunnels during the duration of the battle. So the only thing in the tunnel right here that is remembering this tunnel is this sign. That's all there is right here. So it's like this little dinky sign right here. It barely mentions the Battle of Okinawa. It doesn't mention the 250,000 people who had died. The only thing it says right here is that, hey, this is the tunnel. It was about 1 kilometer long, and there was about 1,000 officers inside the tunnel who were able to make decisions. But this tunnel right here was where literally the life and death was decided for hundreds of thousands of people. Yet, as you walk by here, there isn't anybody looking at the tunnel. Like, we're the only people, and it's Saturday, to keep in mind, right? So Saturday, you would think that there'd be a lot of people kind of looking at this place, but this place is almost widely unknown. So we can take a look right here, but the only thing that is even accessible to these tunnels is just this door blocked off to the general public. And inside here, about 1 kilometer long, just 1,000 meters, 5 tunnels going into this door, there was 1,000 officers controlling and making decisions for 77,000 Japanese soldiers in and for the Battle of Okinawa. So the castle, you know, it's there, right? It's interesting, but this is far more significant. If these officers would have made different decisions, we might be speaking Japanese today. If the people in this tunnel would have maybe made slightly different decisions, maybe found some other way to help win the war, whatever it was, right? The world may not be speaking English today. The world might be speaking Japanese. And it's crazy to think how just this small little area with 1,000 people all just crammed it. And I mean, that must be really, really rough to cram 1,000 people into this kilometer long tunnel. I mean, it'd be really rough. There's probably people dying there. And I mean, we can kind of look inside. It looks like there's some rubble, but yeah, it's like you wouldn't know it. We don't know what happened to the bodies. We don't know what happened with all the people. But this right here is one of the most significant areas in all of Japan. I mean, sure, you could say that the emperor was making the decisions, but it's like the emperor was making the high-level decisions. These are the people on the ground, like actually fighting, battling, figuring out what to do with the Japanese, with the Americans. And in a little bit of time, all of this is just going to be lost to history. People won't know that this existed, right? But this kind of thing is actually some of the most important aspects in all of history. Controlling 77,000 people, let me say it again, around 250,000 people died in just the span of like 2.5 months. It's not something a lot of people talk about, but like World War II was crazy. So the United States now has around 80 something military bases on Japan. It's really unfortunate that all of this happened, but I feel like this is the history that is some of the most important of all of Japan and the United States. It's like without this tunnel, the entire history of like between the United States and Japan would look a lot different than it is today. This little tunnel off the side of the road, it's important. I think that we should remember it that way. Okay, so we are going to the Okinawan Memorial Peace Park. So here, it's kind of a sad place. Even the sunflowers look kind of sad. Yeah, so they're just looking at the ground. Typically they look up at the sun, but now the sunflowers are... Here they have every single person who died in the Battle of Okinawa written down. We're gonna go check it out, see what it looks like. Oh, they seem to be not afraid of people.
Duck/chicken.
Yeah. People must feed it.
Yeah. I want food. Oh no, they're pooping. Oh no.
Check this shit out. Okinawa. People from Okinawa. What is this? Other prefectures?
Other prefectures. So
Not Okinawa. So 77,000.
yeah.
America.
UK,
Oh, UK,
Taiwan,
I don't know that country.
North Korea,
Oh, North Korea was fighting here?
really?
Huh.
And then South Korea.
242,225. It takes a long time to get all the names.
Yeah, by prefecture.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I just finished up at the War Museum in Okinawa. So this is the museum that had all of the names of the people who were killed in the Battle of Okinawa, all 242,000 people who had died. And I don't think that I'm necessarily the right person to talk about the history of the Battle of Okinawa and all of the things that happened here. But after the war is over, the history is oftentimes written not by the losers, but by the winners, right? So this museum right behind me, it's right back there. It showed the entire history kind of the Battle of Okinawa. The entire exhibits seem to be written from the US perspective, right? So, not to say they didn't talk about the Japanese, they did, right? But for example, pretty much every single video that was shown of US forces, and oftentimes it was the US forces helping children, and they talk about more how the United States Army fought really hard and they were so much better than the Japanese that they just would go and fight, right? I don't know. It's kind of I don't think that anybody should glorify war in any sense, but I didn't really have much to add to the war, right? But just the fact that it felt to me like it was really one-sided. And in a lot of the places that we were looking at before, so for example, I showed you guys the video of the 32nd Army headquarters, and I showed you the video outside that cave, right? And there wasn't many people there, but there was a lot of people here. There was a bunch of school children. So it's like all these children are going up in school, just learning about the superiority of the US military. Makes you think, doesn't it? Makes you think. It's too bad. It's too bad because, anyways, yeah, I think that really nobody wins in these types of conflicts because it's like, sure, the United States was able to take over, but I mean, a lot of people died. And for what, really? The thing that I am not really clear about is why are people even fighting World War II to begin with? I know there's reasons, right? Like the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, right? There was expansionism, blah blah blah. There was reasons, right? But to me, it seems like kind of stupid reasons to whatever the reason is. If all these people just died from the war, that's not okay. It's not okay in the slightest. So I think a lot of this war is really, really bad. And honestly, no matter what the reason they're fighting is, it's isn't there a better way? Isn't there a better way to not fight? Can't you guys talk it out? Do some rock, paper, scissors, do something to figure it out. But to have all these people who didn't even want to be there just stuck in the crossfire between, I don't know, that's not okay. Anyways, yeah, war. Bad stuff. Really bad stuff. So we're gonna check out this cave. So I guess this cave was not dug manually, right? But it was just naturally occurring cave that a lot of the civilians would use to take shelter during the war. So it was initially used by just the regular civilians of Okinawa, but then it got later taken over by the military. And it's got a pretty dark past, honestly. A lot of people died in this cave, which is quite unfortunate. But, I guess that type of thing happens during war. So we will show it to you next. Okay, so we made it to the cave. Gotta be careful with the cave though. It looks like we'll need to wear a hard hat to go inside, if I'm not mistaken. So we got all these hard hats right here.
ああ、そうなんですか。あらら。
さんがいないとまたガマの中に入れない。
おお、そうなんですか。 案内時間1時間ぐらいかかるのと、
はい。
今からガイドさんで配して、ちょっと探しに出てくる方いた
うん。
らんですけど、
うんうんうんうん
ガイドさんの時とかも出てくるんですけど、
はい。
だったらちょっとできる方を探してみますけど、
Oh, so we need a I didn't know, but we needed a reservation,
Oh.
and then we need a guide to
Oh.
go with.
Oh.
So if you want, he will try and then find a guide, but
Hmm.
it's not guaranteed. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we can ask
うん。
if they can do it.
うん、OK。はい、じゃあちょっとお願いしてみてもいいですか？
ガマナヤの撮影禁止になりますけど、
Oh, you cannot film either.
Oh, okay.
うん。
Okay, so this right here is a map of the cave that we went in. So we entered through here, I believe,
Mhm,
right?
that's
And then we walked around. There's a ventilation hole where they had a little bit of the air. Then we walked through here, the cave. So right now the cave is below us. And then we walked, I think it was around here.
Mm.
And then we kind of looped back around and then yeah. So I think we exited over here. They were put the rocks in front of the cave.
Mm.
There was a lot of fighting in and around Okinawa, and there was a lot of people who got super injured, right? So you had to do something with the people who were injured and not just killed, right? So there was a bunch of different makeshift hospitals set up all around the island. Now, one of the most kind of famous, or you could say infamous, hospitals around the island is right behind me. Now, it's you can't really see anything on the inside. We just spent an hour going in and around inside there. It's just completely black, so there's nothing to see. So I'm just kind of filming on the outside here. But it is this massive natural cave which they turned into a hospital. Now, there wasn't a lot of people actually at the hospital. It was, or I shouldn't say the hospital, I should say the cave, right? It was around 600 or so people who actually were sent here to do surgery, but it was rough. It was super rough on the inside. So inside the cave, they had different places set for surgery. They had different places set for brain damage. And then they also had this giant pit where people would just go. And then if they couldn't figure out what to do, they would just say like, all right, you go up there. And then they just drop down into the big mass grave and died. So there isn't actually any remains anymore. After the war, they took out all of the bodies and all of the structures inside the cave. So now it's just back to its natural state, more or less, and it's set for tours. But yeah, the whole thing is really rough. The ceilings are really low. So you need a helmet, or else I hit my head a few times on the ceiling. I think Aya, she was okay because she's pretty short. I don't know. Aya, did you hit your head on the ceiling?
No.
Yeah, but yeah, and like if you turn the flashlight off, you could not see a single thing. So also like inside the cave, it was pretty hard to breathe. So just like imagine that you were, fighting in a war. You're there for months. You can't see a thing. People are just screaming because they're in so much pain, and then there's also no light, so you can't see anything. And then on top of that, you're worried about being bombed. And apparently that cave was bombed by the US a ton of times. And there was a few different air holes for ventilation, so to make it a little bit easier to breathe, but there wasn't too many. And like I felt it myself, like it was kind of hard to breathe in there, and they needed to limit the amount of air holes because I guess what people would do is like the US, they would go in and put bombs inside the air hole. I guess they probably didn't know that it was just a bunch of like sick and injured people inside there, because you don't know if it's like soldiers or whatever, but they were getting bombed often. And then actually right past here where there is the entrance of the cave, well, one of the entrances, is a few different ways to get in. I guess the US, they wanted to prevent people from getting out, so they just took a bulldozer and then they just bulldozed a bunch of rocks in front of the entrance of the cave. So people couldn't get out. So there was a lot of people that just were stuck in there and left to die. And then also, like, a lot of people, they didn't want to be handed over to the US. So a lot of them they would just like commit suicide and stuff. So they didn't have to deal with it. So yeah, it was a pretty heavy tour. It was a pretty heavy tour. We were literally the only people in the cave. So it was just me, Aya, and the tour guide. There was nobody else. I mean, it's a Sunday. You would think that this place would have a lot of people, but no one, absolutely no one in the cave. So it's super sad that these places are just kind of getting forgotten. You would think that there would be more people kind of checking it out, but no, not really. So yeah, I don't know. That was a pretty intense thing to see, and it just kind of makes you think about how bad war really is. And I think that we do not want to get into war, because that would suck. Like, that would really suck to have to live in caves and fight and not have waters. Yeah. So another thing inside there, they apparently didn't have any water, right? Because, you know, you're stuck in the cave. You can't just go outside and go get some. So they, like, inside the cave, it was raining a little bit today, and there was some drops that were falling from the ceiling. So they would literally just be there, and they would take their shoes. So they would go and take the sole of their shoe, kind of like the liner, and then people would put that kind of on their chest, and then stand underneath the drip, drip, drip of the water from the top of the cave and try to collect enough water to drink. It's like, that's not very much water. And also, you know, doing that in the pitch dark and with a bunch of smoke, maybe being bombed, people screaming, people dying, people like, it's like blood everywhere. You have to go to the bathroom there. It's not good. It's not good. I feel like sometimes people glorify war, but it seems awful. It seems really, really bad. So I hope that, you know, we can have a lot of peace on Earth, because that seems like no good. It's interesting to see, I guess, as like an educational thing, but man, it's pretty rough. It's really rough. And I think that there are some interesting stories. So there was a story apparently of some guy who was able to save a lot of people. I guess he had a hard time walking, but he got the adrenaline once he was able to save a lot of people. And those stories are great, but I'd rather we didn't have those stories and just people were just healthy and happy and getting along. Because the fact that, you know, 70, 80, I don't know how many years later, like, me and I'm an American, she's Japanese, we're married, just seeing this on our Sunday, like, what was the point of all of this? Like, you know, 240 some odd people died at the Battle of Okinawa, and then, you know, Americans can go here. There's a bunch of American military bases. There's also Japanese people that are allowing tourism. Like, I much prefer this to the fighting, but man, yeah, war, it's pretty bad, pretty bad. So anyways, I don't really have a lot to add on to that, but let's just try to all take care of each other and be safe.